Well, it has now been a few days since May the 4th, the best day of the year, the day that we celebrate Star Wars. And most recently, they have re-released The Phantom Menace into movie theaters, Star Wars Episode 1, and they plan to re-release many of the Star Wars movies in theaters throughout the rest of the year, so I decided, why don't we do a little bit of a series? So over the course of the next couple weeks, I'm going to do a review for each and every one of the Star Wars movies that have released, starting with The Phantom Menace. Because we're going in chronological order. We're not going in the order that they released, we're just going to talk about these in timeline order, so you do the math, figure out which ones come next, and yeah. Of course, that means we start with Star Wars The Phantom Menace, Episode 1, number 1 of the prequels, a movie that came out 25 years ago in 1999, and it's a film that pisses a lot of people off. Yes, indeed, this is a film that disappointed many audience members back in 1999, a time that I was not alive for, so I was not there, but this is a movie that pissed a lot of people off the expectations of the original trilogy, which is absolutely beloved. Here comes the first movie of the prequels, which are going to show the creation of Darth Vader. Now, I've seen this movie a billion times in my lifetime, and I have a very different opinion, I believe, than most people on this movie. At least, I think so. This movie has warmed up a lot over the last 25 years. I don't see as much of a hatred for it. There's more love for this movie now than I think ever existed, specifically in my childhood. I think partially because of Disney's Star Wars. I think Disney kind of gave a beautiful new perspective on this movie that people did not have before. So let's get right into it. I'm just going to start talking about the movie, and there will be spoilers ahead. If you have never seen The Phantom Menace, how have you not seen The Phantom Menace and you're watching this video? So Star Wars The Phantom Menace starts off in the time of the Republic where the Jedi are at their highest power. The Jedi are super powerful. They essentially run the Republic, pretty much. They're like an army for the Republic. But they're currently at this weird point in time where there is a separatist region of the galaxy that have kind of split off and are causing some problems, and there's threatening to be sort of a civil war that's going to happen in the galaxy. So these two Jedi are sent off to deal with the situation. We have Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor, and of course Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, who is the Master Jedi. And on their journey, they end up running into this little boy, Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker, whose destiny is to become the biggest, baddest, bad guy in cinema history, of course, Darth Vader. But now, right here, he's an annoying little kid. An annoying little kid played by Jake Lloyd, who I'm not gonna trash the kid, who's no longer a kid today, but he's very annoying, and the performance is whatever. Definitely the worst part of the movie. Natalie Portman's in this movie as well. She is playing the princess pedophile, the one that sees little Anakin and says, I am going to sleep with that kid when he grows up. Nice job, George Lucas. But essentially the whole arc of this story is when Liam Neeson meets this kid Anakin, he goes, my God,
listen, I gave
that kid might be the chosen one. The man that fulfills the prophecy of Star Wars. The chosen one that'll destroy the Sith, bring balance to the Force, and make the world a better place, so we have to train that kid. And Obi-Wan's just like, hello there. So we have a movie that on paper, I believe when George Lucas was probably scripting out the prequel trilogy, this movie on paper sounds great. You have little Anakin, who's the most powerful, young, Force user that the Jedi have ever discovered. You have Qui-Gon Jinn, who's kind of a rebellious Jedi. He's not really a modern Jedi, which this movie kind of perceives, these people that want to govern, that want to control the galaxy. He's more of like a free, peaceful, monkish Jedi that is so afraid of what the Jedi Order is becoming, and he sees this kid Anakin as a piece of hope to become the chosen one and to sort of rebuild what the Force and the Jedi are supposed to mean to the galaxy. And because of that, on paper, this sounds like a great story. In action, it ends up being a very boring movie. A very boring movie with a lot of corny stuff that did not exist in the original Star Wars trilogy. For example, Jar Jar Binks, a character that I always loved as a kid, I'm not gonna lie. It worked on me. I thought Jar Jar was hilarious, but watching this film as an adult now, he is not hilarious. He is very, very corny. And this movie altogether is just very colorful, very lighthearted. It was most definitely targeted for a younger family audience, which is completely okay, but I just believe the expectations were for it to be more so closer to the themes and the tone of the original movies. But because of that, we really just get a childish adventure with Annie, with Anakin as this kid, as he's on Tatooine, trying to survive, trying to learn about the Jedi and the galaxy and the overarching plots and destruction. This movie's much more political than the original trilogy, something that I love about the prequel movies, as we'll talk about as we get into the second and the third one in the coming days, but this movie is way more political. It's about the Phantom Menace, who is Palpatine, who's kind of this dude who's just scheming behind the scenes, taking a slow way to get to the top and slowly disable the Republic and put it in a spot where he could become Emperor Palpatine. He doesn't just show up after 30 years with a big army.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
You know, that stupid fucking shit. No, there's none of that shit in this movie. He's just a really cold, sadistic... He's Tywin motherfucking Lannister. Or he's actually kind of like Littlefinger, more so, but a Littlefinger that wins.
Chaos is a ladder.
So interweaved with, like, the childish plots that don't really work and the bad child acting, you also get that big galactic political arc that works really well, and you also get awesome Jedi shit, which is like 90% of the reason we watch Star Wars. Jedi shit. And how do you get Jedi shit? Because you get Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fighting Darth Maul, the main Sith in this movie. George Lucas had a very, very big problem in making the prequels because he had to bring in villains that were as good as Darth Vader, or at least challenged what Darth Vader was as a villain. So his answer to that was, of course, we'll get Palpatine. We're going to give you the origin of Emperor Palpatine and Darth Sidious, and you're going to see how that kind of came to be. But he has a new apprentice. We're going to have the most badass-looking dude ever, and he's got a dual-sided lightsaber. I would love to know what it was like to be like a teenager in the 1990s, loving the original Star Wars movie, loving Jedi and the whole idea of it, and just thinking it's the coolest thing, and then seeing my first glance at the Phantom Menace and seeing a dual-sided lightsaber. Holy shit.
I'm gonna come.
It's still, to me today, like one of the coolest things ever. It's so awesome. And the final fight in this movie is absolutely insane. It's arguably the best lightsaber combat scene in the whole series. I think there's one better we'll talk about in a couple days. But it showed that George Lucas really put a heavy interest in the prequels when it came to the fights. The fights needed to be brutal, awesome, badass. They were very, very over-choreographed. But that was kind of the point, is that these Jedi, these Sith, they are so trained to perfection. Their movements, every swing, every block is so precise that it's almost a dance. It's not a strategic fight to the death. It is a dance almost, a beautiful thing to foresee where, yeah, it is a chess game where you're slowly picking apart the moves, trying to get the advantage over your opponent, but it's just so much more than that. And then the music, John Williams is giving one of his best soundtracks. The whole final act of this movie with that fight is so great. And then all the thematical stuff with Qui-Gon getting struck down, and then Obi-Wan having that moment where he takes the fight over and he uses his anger and he beats Maul, and he ends up taking over as Anakin's master, and it creates all these questions going forward into the next couple movies of how is this going to fall apart, how would things have been different if Qui-Gon didn't fall, and it just... There's so much more depth because of the sacrifice of Qui-Gon and what Qui-Gon's character meant to Anakin and to the universe as a whole, that little moment, that sacrifice in that fight, that, you know, Darth Maul winning had such a butterfly effect on the series, and it's so well done. And this movie ends at a place that maybe not a lot of people were excited about. People really were excited to see the Clone Wars, and this movie teases the Clone Wars, but we don't really get into it until the second movie. This movie really teases, you know, the whole sell of the prequels is Anakin, you know, Darth Vader's origin story, and Anakin in this movie is just an annoying little prick, and you can't really get to love him or really enjoy him as a character because he's just a little annoying prick, right? So it's... I could see that disappointment. I could see the disappointment in there being so much time spent in Tatooine's desert and just not a lot happening. Of course, you get the pod racing scene, which is, like, amazing. Because my whole life, before I'd seen this movie, I was like, what is pod racing? What is pod racing? And then I, of course...
Now this is pod racing!
I understand it now. It's a great sequence. It was very well made. I love the design of the droids throughout this whole trilogy. Like... George Lucas had another very hard task. In the original movies, you have the iconic look of stormtroopers, the iconic look of the Empire with their ships and everything that they are. They're really kind of these stand-ins for Nazis, but they have their own little twist on the visual style that makes them so unique. And doing this new trilogy, not having the Empire, not having stormtroopers, he had to figure out a way to do something that had its own unique touch, that had its own unique visual style, and could feel like its own thing separated from that. He didn't go, hey, for this new trilogy, let's just bring the stormtroopers back and call them the First Order. We'll also make Rey the Chosen One and ruin all your childhoods. Oh, this is gonna be a fun series to make, goddamn. No, but instead he makes these droids that are as iconic as the stormtroopers. They have a very cool look to them, even when they're CGI, but there is a lot of practicality in a lot of the scenes with them. They're just so unique and so cool and so fun to watch get destroyed. It's just something that he didn't need to do. He could have been lazy with it, but he did something different and unique, and it brought its own feel, tone, and visual style to the prequels that really, really set itself apart from the original movies, which is what this needed. This movie needed to set itself apart from those films. We're in the same universe, we're telling a prequel story to those, but this is a new thing. We are taking a step forward in filmmaking, and we are trying something different. And although it did not work for everybody, although the movie as a whole did not work with many Star Wars audiences, I still think to this day it ended up being one of those movies that took big swings, it took a big risk, it did a lot right, it did a lot wrong, it didn't hit on every idea that George Lucas was going for, but at the very, very least, you have to say this was made by somebody who was chasing a vision, who was chasing a dream of a story that he wanted to tell in his universe. It was not a movie that was chasing money. It was not a movie that was chasing to sell toys, or maybe it was a little bit, but it's not a movie that was seeking to just, please the mouse. It was a movie that was trying to tell a story that George Lucas thought was a necessary story to tell in this universe, and he did not give a fuck if anybody liked it or not. It was his story, and that's all that mattered. Because of that, I respect the hell out of this movie, and honestly, I enjoy it. Do I rewatch it a lot? No, not really. It's not my first choice. But it's a good movie that I think has aged particularly well. It has a great third act, and the first glimmer you really get of Ewan McGregor playing that iconic character of Obi-Wan, I think Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon is brilliant. And overall, this is a movie that I personally love, but if I'm going to put on my critic hat here, I will give it a fair score. We will give Star Wars The Phantom Menace a 3 out of 5. It's a really solid movie. And you know what? It's compared to a lot of the new shit that we get, this thing's a fucking masterpiece, baby! Please make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, because you're about to see a bunch of Star Wars reviews. So are you guys excited for that? Let me know. Please make sure to click on the video that's going to be on your screen now, and I will see you guys in the next one.